So we kind of completed the eighth one. The 27th and the 28th, we will, as we summarize the whole chapter, we will also look at the meaning of 27 and 28. Okay. So if you remember, now let me just, before going into the verses, etc., let's just spend a couple of minutes trying to mentally recall this chapter. Okay. Akshara Brahma Yoga. Okay, that's the name of the chapter. Now, if you notice, if you see the pattern of what has been discussed in the chapter is largely about death. Okay. சின்ன வயசுல my father would be very displeased whenever there is a conversation on death. Okay. டிவியில கூட யாராவது somebody dying and crying அப்பா வந்து டிவி சேனல் சேஞ்ச் பண்ண முடியும். He'll immediately he'll get worried.
இந்த அப்பாஸ் they were worried about negative stuff affecting us அந்த மாதிரிலாம் எப்பயுமே ஏதாவது அழற மாதிரிலாம் வந்ததுன்னா உடனே வந்து டிவி சேனலை மாத்தி விட்டுருவோம்.
They will change. They will want to change that. So when you're young, somehow in our households, generally in our, although there's a lot of conversation about death in Bhagavad Gita and all of that, and then there's Upanishads, all of this is there in our culture, but the conversation of death is never really encouraged or discussed about. Right? So what happens is, it always remains a mystery. It always remains enigmatic in terms of what it actually is and how do we, it's not so much how we face it, it's so much about what is it for us, what does it mean. Because a lot of times we live in the fear of something, and the largest fear we live is of death, right? There's obviously fear of failures, fear of relationships, fear of humiliation, fear of dejection. All of that is there. There is also this fear of death, which is a very fundamental fear that we carry. And that fear of death comes from our primal nature, because we are animals. The need to survive, need to protect my what is called as just my survival instinct. Essentially, it drives from there, right? So there is this fear of death fundamentally. Now the thing is, only human beings have this ability to ponder over this idea. The other creatures or animals don't have the ability to ponder over this idea. They just have the ability to, there is something called as fight or flight. They either fight for their survival or they take flight, which means they run away. There's only two things that they know. They don't know there's something that they can face death, question, understand, and process. But this has happened in our culture, and it is celebrated also. So those who know of the story of the Kathopanishad, where Nachiketas, an 8-year-old boy, went and had a conversation with Yama, right? And that conversation is a very, very, it's a very celebrated conversation in our cultural texts, etc. And it's always often quoted conversation. And so here you have an 8-year-old boy who's going and talking to the Lord of Death, Yama. And he's having a direct conversation, and Yama is offering him so many beautiful things. He's saying, don't ask me this question. He's asking what happens after death, what is the reality, what is truth, and all that. He wants to understand that. But Yama says, don't ask me that. Ask me anything else. I'll give you riches, I'll give you women, I'll give you a long life, I'll give you a mansion, a palace, I'll give you many, many years to live in comfort and joy and all of that. But then yet this boy maintains that, no, I want to know what is the truth. What is this known as the absolute truth, Brahman? What happens after death? And why does Yama keep evading him? Because the reason is that we are not ready to face the answer. So like my guru many a times says, he would say, and I've heard this, people say this, he would say that when somebody asks, why didn't you say this to me at that time? No, you could have said this even then. You would have known this, right? And I would say, I would have said the answer, but you would have not been able to receive the answer. And that is so true, right? Many a times when we know, many answers come our way, but we may not be in a position to receive the answer. So in the same way, he's pushing him out. Yama is pushing Nachiketa out, say that maybe he's not ready, maybe he's not ready, maybe he's not ready, because that's what's going in Yama's mind. And it's also a process of evaluating the student, how determined I am in wanting to know the truth, right? And so it's always the case. The answer that we receive is always proportionate to the fire of the question. If it's a lukewarm gas on the simmer, you put the gas on simmer and then mildly the water is just heating up, that kind of a question, the answer will also be of that nature. But if your question is burning, you've got a full flame on and the water is boiling, then you will get the most profound and the most intense answer. So, pariprashnena sevaya, correct? Pariprashna, the question that comes from that, it's a question that comes from that desire to know, not the desire to, oh, may I figure out if he knows, or if what he's saying is, I correlate with something else. No, that is what he said, and so on and so forth. We're in a process of trying to just navigate through an intellectual space, and it's not something that is really bothering you, like what bothered Buddha, right? He wasn't able to sleep after he saw the dying man, the dead man, the old man, and so on and so forth. He wasn't able to sleep. He had to go. Like Ramana said, somebody asked Ramana, Bhagavan, you're telling me you should be in family life, you should make sure you take care of everything, you should not leave family life, you should do your sadhana while being in the family life. How come you left the family and went away? You yourself left everything and went away, and you're telling us that you should, take care of your family and all that. And Ramana said, I didn't ask questions like you guys are asking. My desire was so burning, I just went. So if your desire is so strong, so burning, just go. Right? So we've spoken about this. Now, what is happening in this particular conversation is that Bhagavan Krishna is directly bringing him face to face with the concept of death. Now, one thing about the Bhagavad Gita that I've noticed, because you go through this iteratively several times, right? And every time you go through this iteratively, there are different understandings that one receives. What you notice is that each of these chapters, the way Veda Vyasa is structured, is complete in themselves. You can pick up any chapter, contemplate upon it, and spend time with it. It is not required that you have to go back to a previous chapter and see the context. Not required. It's useful, but not necessary. And see, it is not like, which is why you see the chapters are of different number of stanzas. Conversation between Krishna and Arjuna wouldn't have been, okay, Pam, now this chapter ends here. Let me start the next chapter with you. Conversation. Right? This chapter, I only 72 verses I'm going to say in this chapter. After this, it is a new chapter. So make sure you take the right notes. It wouldn't be like that. It is a conversation. Now, Veda Vyasa has classified it or broken it down into conversation, into chapters, and he's figured out the right places to kind of and see, Veda Vyasa is known, his name is Veda Vyasa. Vyasa means the one who categorizes and classifies.
But logical, yeah, the whole
thing is no, because the whole thing is a conversation.
Very logical. It's a even though it's a conversation, it's not compartmentalized or chapter wise or anything. It just progresses in a very logical way.
Absolutely.
Very logical.
Absolutely. And so the questions are also relevant. The questions are not out of context. The question that Arjuna asks is also relevant to what Krishna is saying. So the conversation is flowing in a certain way, but the way Veda Vyasa is beautifully classified into chapters is you pick up any chapter and we can spend time with it and we can contemplate upon it. So that is where the work is structured. So this particular Akshara Brahma Yoga, he presents the idea of death. And why death is because see, why is death an important topic to discuss is because what you live, what we live, essentially is reflected in the way we die. In many ways, the way we live is reflected in the way we die. And that is, it doesn't matter whether you lived for 15 years and you've died, 40 years and you've died, or 80 years and you've died, or 100 years and you've died. It doesn't matter. The way one dies is an accumulation, in many ways, is an accumulation of the way one has lived. And what death brings about is, in a way, it brings about a cessation of your individual identity, that the one that I know myself of. In my lifetime, I have identified my strengths, I have identified my weaknesses, I know my problems, I know what I can achieve, I know my limitations, my conditionings, all of that I have studied over my lifetime. So this person that I know of, and I have built this tool to do something that comes to a seizure, or comes to an end. Because after this, I may not have this tool, right? Even assuming there's an aspect, obviously there's an aspect of me that continues, but that sense, if I have that I continue, I don't have this tool that is available, right? And you worked on this tool for so long, 20 years, 30 years, 40, 50, 60 years, you worked on this tool and you've understood it. Now this is not available for you to do anything with. So that is a big loss, right? So death in that sense is essentially a loss of something that you have refined over a period of time, right? So you refine a particular something, a device or something that you build, and you refine it over time, and you've got this well functioning thing that you know how to make it work. That is, now you lose it. That is one. The second thing is, because my identity is associated with this form, I don't know how to deal with loss of identity, which is why a lot of people undergo this crisis, identity crisis. 40 years, I get identity crisis. It's not that when you're 39, you ask, who are you? And then I know who am I? And then suddenly at 40, I don't know. It's not like that. It's just that gradually you come to realization that what all I have identified as me is now breaking up. It's breaking up. It's not giving me that joy. It is not giving me that satisfaction. It is not giving me that fulfillment that I thought it will. Right? So that dropping of this identity as I is happening, and hence I'm worried about it, because I don't know the loss of my identity. There's one movie that I'd like you all to watch. Maybe I did share once, or I don't know. This movie called Man from Earth. So I told you about this, I think. So there's a very beautiful movie. It's about an hour and a half, and this man is he's lived for about 13,000, 14,000 years. And there's some process within him that it doesn't die, just that it doesn't die. And then but then wherever he lives, people find it very strange that he's not aging. And there are people around him who start dying, but he is not. So over the years, he's created a pattern of every 10 years relocating himself to an entirely different place. Gives himself a new identity, a new name, a new this thing, a new all of that. Establishes new friends, new community. Now, how many of us are able to do that? How many of us can? I mean, that is a very inspirational movie to me, because you think about it. I mean, he is doing it over a scale of 10 years because he is lived for 14,000 years. So 10 years is a small thing. But are we in a position like every 3 years, can we do something like that? Can we completely, I want to start afresh? Would we be in a position, which is what a lot of mendicants did, a lot of parivrajaka's did? I mean, sannyasis, those were dandi sannyasis, they would travel chaturmasya only, they will stay in one place, but the other times they'll just keep going around. They'll go to places where they are not known, etc. Why? Because your society also establishes your identity. As much as I don't want to establish myself as this, I sit, I do dhyana, aham brahmasmi, tattvamasi, வெளியில போன உடனே நீங்க மாமா நீங்க தானே அந்த இது பண்ணேல் அப்படிம்பா உடனே. I am trying to forget it, நீ ஏன்டா ஞாபகப்படுத்துற அப்படின்னு தோணும். Because the world is out there to establish our identity based on the form, the physical form, and our attributes that we carry. Now, it is established so much in us that we are afraid or worried to drop it, because we don't know what else. Correct? Think about it. We don't know what else. Suppose I am not known as this person, this individual that I'm doing this engagement, these relationships, these people, the ones I love, the ones I engage with, the ones I work with, the ones I transact with, or my likes and my dislikes. If this is not there, what am I? Is a very uncomfortable question. But whether we like it or not, we are moving towards that. Like we say, every day we move towards the grave. From the time we are born, every day slowly moving towards the grave. And so at one day, at one point, this ought to happen. For some unfortunate people, it happens in an accident. They're not ready. And so all they know is they suddenly disembodied. All their vasanas, their desires, their aspirations, their attachments, their disappointments, everything stays. It's just the body drops. But all of that stays. How do you resolve it now? So and it's a very, very scary state to be in, right? And what we do, we don't talk about it then. Nallade paise. But the fact of the matter is, it's going to happen. We can keep pushing it, but when it happens, and again, we spoke about the other thing. So what Bhagavan Krishna is talking about is, during this period, how do I keep myself in a way that when death occurs, when cessation occurs, what are you? What is your state? And that has to be critically examined. And when can you examine that? I can't say, oh, okay, let death come, then I will figure it out, because you don't know when it's going to come. And this is one mystery that is always left, right? In nature, you don't know, like for example, the beautiful Tulsi plant, Tulsi Devi, she's growing outside. There are a few, but one set, suddenly it's starting to decay and there is Poochi that is coming. And we have to go and now treat and figure out and do stuff. Now, when that will happen, why it will happen, how long it will take for it to decay and go away, we can't say. I mean, it's like that for a process that is in the natural course of events, natural course of things. How much more, there are more parameters within us that are even more destructive, right? Tulsi Devi is not going to go walk across the road and stand in front of a car or a bus that's coming. We will. Right? I may want to do a bungee jump. I will write this thing. I'll say that you are not responsible, anything happens, but I would still do that and do a bungee jump, right? So we put ourselves to so much more risks than most of the other creatures on the planet. So which means our potential of or the probability of dying is far more. But yet, and this is the thing that hit Buddha. This is the question that the Yaksha asked Yudhishthira, asked him, what is the greatest wonder? And he said, the greatest wonder is that man sees death all around him every day, but does not believe that he is going to die. So, and again, see, these are things that doesn't have to leave us grim and I'm going to die. No, it's not that. It is about recognizing a fact that yes, I am going to die, and what am I doing about it? Now, I can't do anything about death, but what can I do is how am I at the time of death? So there are two ways I can be. If I say at the time of death, I want to be in a pleasant state, I want to be in a state where when the body drops, I want to completely drop everything and go. I don't want to hold these attachments. I don't want, because once death occurs, okay, imagine death occurs and you want to still hover around your loved ones. Will they like it? Pooja gija panni nammala thorthi viduva. Correct? You might feel that I still want to be around my loved ones after I die also, but they will see you as what? Pisasu, Pudom, ghosts and all that. And they will do all sorts of mantram, yantram, tantram and all that to drive you away. They will call exorcists to drive you away.
The biggest desire சொல்றது என்னன்னா எக்ஸ்டர்னலோட the 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 biggest desire is for the body, for our own body. Yeah, they say that even on the ஆத்மா பெரியர்ச்சி கூட they say that இந்த துவாரங்கள்லாம் வந்து பஞ்சு வைக்கிறதுக்கு காரணமே அதுதான் அப்படின்னு, because it has a strong desire to come back into the body,
back into the
and
body.
not leave the the earthly pleasures. அதனால
Absolutely.
அதான் அந்த அதை வந்து நம்ம அதான் நீங்க சொல்ற மாதிரி ப்ராக்டிஸ் தான் குருஜி. அது ப்ராக்டிஸ் எப்படின்னா the final dropping is the body, but before that you have to drop lot of things.
So absolutely. So the dropping, I cannot say that when death comes, I will start dropping. It will not. Why? Very important note. Why? Because the faculties will start failing. And one of the faculties is your mind. Your mind will start failing. So if I read, okay, I have read Bhagavad Gita now, so I understand at the time of death, I have to make sure I am this way. Now that thought may not occur at the time of death. Now what do you do? And like we spoke, it's not like a trial error. Oh, you're sorry, but it's not like a dress rehearsal, right? Okay, I died wrongly. Let me come back and die properly. Take two. You can't do that. Take two is a whole process. You have to come back. No, but you'll not remember what was take one. So what becomes important is, because we don't know when it's going to occur and because we don't know what our state will be, if I recognize that I have to keep myself in a certain state, and as we said, the most important thing, our state of being should become second nature. Not that I am calm only if this situation, I am peaceful only if this, I will not be agitated if people around me don't agitate me. If you don't irritate me, I will be fine. Otherwise, I will get it. So what we have done ourselves is we are defining ourselves based on the environmental conditions. And because what is happening is, if those environmental conditions change, those tendencies will rise up. Right? What we are trying to see is, can those tendencies not rise up like that? Can those tendencies dissolve over time? Can those tendencies dissolve? Jealousy, hatred, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. Can those tendencies dissolve so that even when my mind is not working, when I'm nearing death, because that is one of the major faculties that I have to hold myself, think this, think that, do this, do that. That's failing. Can my tendencies be in a way that I'm content, that I'm not so held on to things? I'm not irritated with life. I'm not frustrated with things. Can my tendencies be such? And this is what we are working on. Right? So when Bhagavan Krishna is saying Akshara Brahma, he's saying that when you this, although he is talking about Akshara Brahma, which means Akshara Brahma, the Brahman that is indestructible, yoga, which means unison with that supreme consciousness, although he is talking about that, he is talking more about death. So let's just look at some of the verses that he has highlighted here. So the first two verses is Arjuna's question, right? We discussed this. There are 7 questions he asks. Kim tad brahma, kim adhyatmam, kim karma, kim adhibhutam, kim adhidaivam, kim adhiyajnam. So these are 6 questions, and then he asks, Prayana kale cha katham jnayosi. So how do I know you, O Bhagavan Krishna? Or how do I, what Prayana kale means at the time of death, how do I keep my mind on you? Right? On you or on this place of bliss and joy. And then he starts describing Aksharam Brahma, which means Brahman is this indestructible, and your own nature is Adhyatmam, which means it is you yourself who is the nature of the self. And then he starts explaining those things. And the thing that is important that I want to bring our attention to is this one. Antakale cha mam eva smaran muktva kalevaram. Yaf prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshayah. Antakale cha mam eva. At the time of death. Antakale cha mam eva. Smaran muktva kalevaram. Kalevaram is the body. One who drops the body. Muktva kalevaram. Drops the body. Smaran means keeps thinking of whom? Mam eva. Enna pati mattum. Thinking about me alone at the time of death. One who drops the body. Yaf prayati samadbhavam yati nastyatra samshaya. There is no doubt that he will attain to me. Okay. Now again, as we said here, the point is not Krishna is so egoistic and saying that Yannapati mattum yosi appadinalla. It is not. He's because here Krishna has now taken the stance of this Brahman, Paramatma, supreme consciousness which is existing, Satchit Ananda that is existing always, and he is now identified with that. So what he is telling Arjuna is whatever is your Ishta. Should I think about only Krishna? No, think about Devi, think about Lalita Tripura Sundari, think about your Ishta Devata, think about whoever is your prominent Ishta. Think about your Guru. Now that when we do that, he says, there is no doubt, Mad Bhavam, you will come and attain to me. Nasti atra samshaya, there is no doubt about this. Okay. And then one verse which I love a lot in this one is the next one. This one is Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tyajantye Kalevaram. Same thing. Kaunteya Sadatat Bhava Bhavitaha. Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhya cha. So saying Tasmat, therefore, Sarveshu Kaleshu, at all times, Mam Anusmara, think about me. And Yudhya, which means fight. So he's saying Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhya cha, which means at all times, think about me. Sarveshu Kaleshu, which means at all times, Mam Anusmara, Yannapati Yosi, think about me. Or essentially, whatever we spoke about, think about that which there are people who are able to meditate on the impersonal Brahman. People are able to meditate upon Omkara. People meditate upon Shiva, Devi, Muruga, Ganesha, whatever. Fix your mind, keep your mind on that and keep doing that recall. Yudhyacha. Yudhyacha means fight. Again, remember, he is standing in the battlefield. There is a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna in the battlefield. And Krishna is telling him, continuing to think about this, you keep fighting. Which is very important for us. Why? Because he doesn't say think only at the time of death. He says continue to think about this all the time and, excuse me, live your life. Fight here, essentially the way we take fight is live your life, because see, Arjuna could do far more greater things because he was far more capable. நமக்கு வாழ்க்கை வாழறதே கஷ்டமா இருக்கு. அதுவே ஒரு ஃபைட்டா இருக்கு நமக்கு. Right? So for him, fighting was really, he had to do so many things, and then he had to also fight, protect a kingdom, establish dharma, and this, that, and the other. Right? For us, it's just, I mean, just to live our life is a struggle. To establish ourselves in this life is a struggle. So he's saying, you do this, you go. He doesn't say there'll be no struggle. In the whole Bhagavad Gita, you will notice Bhagavan Krishna never says there'll be no struggle. Vada kanda unak tadai odren onan chellame appadilla. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do any of that. You know, those cajoling things. He doesn't do that. He tells you clearly what is the fact of the matter, and then leaves the decision to him. But at the same time, keeps telling him that yudhyasva bharata. Keep fighting. Keep fighting means keep living. Listen to all of these. These tattvams that I'm talking about, philosophies I'm telling you, don't have to be done as part-time. Right? It is not like, okay, today let me do Bhagavad Gita for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's not like that. We carry this with ourselves. We carry this idea. This has to keep ringing in our heads, in our minds. And of course, not just Bhagavad Gita, whatever we do, whatever satsangas that we do in whatever forms, through discourses, through readings, through different whatever sources that we receive, this needs to keep getting reinforced. Mam anusmara yudhyacha. Sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yudhyacha. Okay. And then he goes on to say, Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetasa nanya. So you continue to do abhyasa. Now, how does this happen? This happens only through abhyasa. Abhyasa means sadhana, practice, regular practice. And then Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anoraniyan Anusmaretyah. So this one he talks about that essentially the essence or principle that I'm talking about exists everywhere. It is in everything, and everything is existing in that, and so on and so forth. Important thing here is saying prayana kale manasa chalena bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva bhruvor madhye pranam aveshya samyak satam paramam purusham upaiti divyam. So this is an important phrase. Prayana kale, same thing. Prayana kale means at the time of death, at the time of leaving. Manasa achalena, keep your mind in a stable, still, calm state. Bhaktya yukto yoga balena chaiva. So either you do it through yoga or through bhakti or through dhyana or whatever form. Bhruvor madhye, very important. Bring your attention to your bhru madhya, which is your agnya chakra, between the two eyebrows. Bring your attention there. And this, in the Bhagavad Gita, he mentions this several times. This is a hint that Krishna gives us. If you don't know where to go within yourself, close your eyes and go here. Right? Because a lot of times we don't know, several of us don't know what it means to meditate because we've never practiced meditation. So what do? Of course, you go to a teacher and learn methodically, but then to the issue that we typically have is we don't know where to go when we have to meditate. When we close our eyes, we don't know where to go. And the first thing that comes to us when we close our eyes is either thoughts, a whole gush of thoughts, waves of thoughts, or a certain blankness which invokes fear. So gush of thoughts invokes anxiety, or blankness or darkness that gives us fear. So it's either anxiety or fear. And then we keep searching and groping in the dark where to go. So he says Bhruvor Madhye. And this is a practice we have also done several times. Bring your attention here, and you will see for that moment your mind settles, you come to a certain state of awareness within yourself. And then he goes on to say, Yadaksharam Veda Vido Vadanti Vishanti. Okay, so all of this is fine. Sarvadvarani Sanyamya Manohridi Nirdhyacha. Same thing. You close your eyes, Bhru Madhye. See again, Murdhnyatmana Pranam Astito Yoga Dharanam. Bring your focus and attention to your mind into your heart and meditate. And this is important. Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyaharan mam anusmaran. So those who are not able to think of, or rather, those who are able to think of Om as the form of, as something to meditate upon, that is also great. If you want to think of form, or think of Om as the akshara, the letter Om or the sound Om. Continue to listen to that and then stay in that. Establish yourself in that, right? And we said establishing oneself in something, or in something like this, where your mind, your heart, your intellect, you're bringing it into a singular place. Yoga, that is yoga. Agnirme vachishritah vak hridaye hridayam mai aham amrite amritam brahmani. So the vak, I bring it into the Agni, I bring it into the vak I bring it into the mind, heart, the mind, heart, I bring it into Brahman. So when I do this kind of this withdrawal and I stay, this is Samyak Nyasaha. See, this is done using during the Nyasa. Of what I chanted was in the Laghunyasa of Rudram. Nyasa means you're establishing those deities, those elements into their appropriate places. But when you establish yourself, your attention, your focus, your intellect, your mind in yourself, it is Samyak Nyasa or Samatva Nyasaha, which means you're establishing yourself in Samatva, in equality. And when you bring the word together, Samyak Nyasa or Samatva Nyasa is what? Sanyasaha. So that is sannyasa. Right? A sannyasa is that. That is the space in which a sannyasi or a yogi essentially stays established in, or is supposed to be established in. Right? Then he goes on to, then how does he, okay, so he continues to explain this. Mamupetya punarjanma dukkhalayam ashashvatam. He says, dukkhalayam ashashvatam. He points out that this whole world, or this world that we live in, is a dukkha alaya. It's a place or a temple of sorrow, temple of suffering. Okay. Brahma bhuvanan lokaha punaravartino arjuna. Okay. Sahasra yugam pariyantam. Okay, then the next few verses, he talks about the scale of time, right? Avyaktad avyakta sarvaha. So he talks about the scale of time, where the scale of time that we are experiencing is very limited, but the actual scale of time is far larger. It talks about Chatur Yugas, the life of Brahma, and so on and so forth. So we discussed that at length when we did these verses. So we need to understand that the scale of time that we are experiencing is minuscule, insignificant scale of time. So in a way, he's also pointing out, don't make a big deal about it. Okay. Do things that you are in tune with yourself. First, of course, try to go within and get to a point of understanding yourself, and then be in tune with what you do, and be in harmony with the environment that you're around with as much as possible. Live this life and go. Right? If you have this great aspiration of self-realization and all of that, wonderful, go for it. If you have that burning desire, go for it. But otherwise, his way is saying that don't think that this lifetime that you're having is significant in terms of the overall grand scale of things. You won't even know that you came and you went, right? So don't make it a big deal, which is what he is presenting in these few verses. And then he goes on to Avyaktokshara ityuktah tam ahu paramam gatim nivartante. So now the next few verses he is talking about this one, the two paths that we talk about. Okay, Agnir Jyotirah Shuklah Shanmasa Uttarayanam Tatra Prayada Gachanti Brahma Brahmavido Janaha Dhumo Ratris Tata Krishna Shanmasa Dakshinayanam Tatra Chandramasam Jyotihi Yogi Prapya Nivartate. So these are two margas we spoke about, the Archaradi Marga and the Dhumadi Marga, or the Surya Marga and the Chandra Marga. The Archaradi Marga, or the Marga, or the path of light through which you pass through, there is no return. Because now this individual is now dissolved. He has understood that the individual is not really an individual, it's part of the whole, or it dissolves into the whole, or it is essentially doesn't have an individual independent standing. It is completely dependent on the whole. Come to that understanding, and then there is Archaradi Marga. There is no need for it to come back to do anything here. And that is what one tries to get to. The other Marga, or the other path, is called as Dhumadi Marga. Dhumadi Marga is the Marga of smoke and darkness, which you go and you come back. You go and come back. Asurya namate loka andhena tamasavataha tamste pretya bhigachanti. This is Ishavasya Upanishad. Tamste pretya bhigachanti yeke chatma hano janaha. So you keep going and coming back, going and coming back. And then he closes the last two. I mean, it doesn't close really. The last two verses are to say that Naite Sruti Partha Janan Yogi Mukhyati Kaschana. So the one who knows both of these paths, he chooses the right path. He is not confused anymore and takes up to the, which is the right path, obviously, the Archaradi Marga. Because you want essentially, you don't want to keep beating back and forth, back and forth. See, you may not remember, but there is somewhere within me, there is this feeling that I am constrained, right? My memory, my mind or brain may not have the capacity to hold lifetimes of memory. I may not remember that I was born earlier. Who's to say this is my first birth? Wouldn't know. But there is something within saying that this is constraining me. I am constrained. I've seen a lot of this again and again and again. Feeling. That feeling is very individual, very personal. And when that occurs, then you know possibly there is a way for me to get out of these trappings. Right? Because I realize that there is more suffering than joy. Joy is essentially suffering sugar coated. Essentially leads me to suffering eventually. Leaves me high and dry. Right? So one who knows this path takes on to that path. Vedeshu yagneshu tapassu chaiva daneshu yat punya phalam pradishtam atyeti tat sarvam idam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chadyam. So he says yogis who know that this understanding, this knowledge is greater than doing any Vedas, rituals and all of that, they come to the supreme abode. Right? So what does this last verse mean? It means that whatever we do in terms of our puja and prayers and rituals and all of that we do, it has only meaning if there is this understanding. The real understanding of this, that where am I heading to, what am I trying to get to, if it's not there, then all of these are just going to keep you trapped here. You just keep doing it. You do japa, you can go stand up and claim that, oh, I did 1 crore japa. So what? When I look at you, your face appears like this, na another. The 1 kodi japa enga irukku. Right? And if I'm not able to spread joy and be joyful and be light, it's important. It's said that you move through this world as though we currently moving through this world with a lot of glue on us. When we walk through the world, things are sticking on, everything is sticking on to us, and we don't know how to pull it out. Walk through the world with the lubricants on you so that you don't stick onto anything. Just pass through, breeze through. All the great people have lived and gone. We talk about them, but they have gone. That's it. Finished. Nobody's going to keep talking about us. The people talk about us or not, it's their business. We don't have to live a life that we don't have to do all that. It's too much of a burden. Right? Even after several hundreds of years, many people won't be talking about many of the saints we are talking about now. Right? Give it time, people will fade off. So again, which is why Krishna talks about the scale of time. He talks about the yugas and chaturyugas and all that, saying that it's minuscule, insignificant. So Akshara Brahma Yoga. So here he talks about what is death. How do you perceive this death and not run away from it, face it, try to learn how to receive it. And if we have a little bit of idea or a thought that at the time of death I need to be in a certain way, we can't do that at the time of death. It has to be done now. And whatever that is, figure that out now. How you want to be, like the other day I was saying, right? If you're dying suddenly 3 days before death, you didn't have coffee and you're just asking coffee. அடுத்த ஜென்மத்தில் will be born in this thing, maybe Starbucksல smelling coffee throughout your life. So I'm not saying people who are there. What I'm saying is we don't know what we ask for. We really don't know. And this is important to note that it's your tendency, not your mentally you may not be really asking for something. It's a tendency. It's a strong desire. It is something that is there inside. And you look at your life right now is exactly a reflection of some burning desires that you had when you died. Something that I've asked for. Some people are born to very aged parents because you probably asked for that kind of a situation. Your parents die early. You have this situation, your financial problems, this and the other. So somewhere we've been asking for some kind of thing we didn't realize, right? Somebody jokes. I remember reading from Tamil magazines in a young age. My mother would say, somebody kept asking for கையில வந்து பணம் பொருள்னோ கையில பணம் பொருள்னோ அப்படின்னு. So he is a cashier at the ATM, something like that, right? But it's no longer his money, but he's still having the joy. Huh?
Conductor, bus conductor ஆயிட்டா.
Correct. So, you never know what you really want to ask. You'll never know. So anyway, so that way chapter 8, Bhagavan Krishna closes with, again, Bhagavan Krishna doesn't close. Vedavyasa kind of closes this chapter thinking that this is a logical point, and then we'll pick it up in the 9th chapter, where he again goes on explaining the same idea. He elaborates a little bit, saying how when what happens, the cycle, how does this cycle keep going? Kshine punye mrityuloke vishanti. You go to what is called as heaven, and then you come back again and again. It's going on and on. These are good things to know, because again, we have not seen death. It's not about what's going to happen after death. These are indications that where do you want to be when your body drops, and we have the ability to control that right now. And that's a very powerful thing. To know this is a very powerful thing, right? So then you work towards that, and you make it you bring yourself to that state where you're not helpless anymore. You have the power and the ability to decide where you want to be, right? So that is chapter 8. Oh, कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि। सदाशिवायेति समर्पयामि, जगदम्बिकायै इति समर्पयामि, सद्गुरुनाथाय इति समर्पयामि। हरि ओम तत्सद्गुरुभ्यो नमः।